Now it's time for our last part of the day, and that's a panel discussion. And we need 3 chairs on stage, and I think then there's no room for me on stage. So I'd like to welcome on stage our first panelist. She's program manager at the Dutch AI Coalition, and that's a coalition consisting of 500 organizations. Am I right? About. And she's an innovation orchestrator. I love that name, orchestrator. Like you have musicians in front of you. She's working at TNO. A big applause for Anita Lieverdink. Yes, welcome. And there's a mic for everyone. Yeah, there's a mic. The first is for you. I'm just going to announce the next panelists, and I hope it works without stairs. Our next panelist is an ecosystem lead at ACE AI Lab, and an academic pre-incubator in Amsterdam, and he has a PhD in AI, and he told me, so I speak the language of nerds. Welcome on stage, Vladimir Nedovic. Yes, thank you, and you'll get a mic as well. There is already, thanks. And last but not least, he started his first machine learning consultancy company 5 years ago and has already started another company that's called Deeploy, in which he develops a product. Welcome, Maarten Stolk. Yes. And there's a mic for you and a chair for you. And yeah. Great. Welcome to Sit Here panel. We are going to discuss all about the challenges we feel which are most important in bringing AI from lab to market. And a couple of you are already filling in the question in Slido, because I am curious to know, what do you think is the most important challenge? And of course, I'm also interested in something else, but sorry? Yeah, there is no open question about something else. Was it? No, okay. Then we'll leave it like this, because the first 3 challenges, access to large data sets. Is having access to large data sets to validate their innovative AI solutions. That seems to be, well, almost as important as something else. Oh, now we should talk about something else then. But, okay. Dealing with bias means dealing with bias as a result of the lack of expertise on social impact and diversity. And the last one, lack of sufficient infrastructure, means that is infrastructure that is often needed for AI-related activities. And these 3 challenges come from an expert team in LTP Robust Venturing Program, with which you are probably familiar with. I am not, but you are nodding, all of you. We don't have to explain anything about this program. All right, good. So they have thought these are the 3 most important challenges, but there might be other challenges even more important. But let's talk about these first, because is there any one of the panel who thinks access to large data sets or a lack of sufficient infrastructure or dealing with bias is the most important? I'm looking at you, Anita, because...
All right. Is it working? Yes.
Yeah.
I think it is. All right. Yeah, I actually also agree with something else.
Oh, really?
Because
I would have guessed you would have said data.
Well, data is we did of course many interviews with AI startups, and especially if you want to grow a startup in AI, access to data was number 1 of the challenges they were facing. But from lab to market, I would say you need a great team. and you need access to entrepreneurial people. And maybe that is why something else is right now on top. I'm not sure if you agree.
Let's ask the audience, and I'm sorry for the online people who are left out now. Who thinks a great team is the most important challenge, or the biggest challenge? Well, there are some people agreeing with you, Anita. So good. We tackled that. And other panelists, what do you think? Do you agree with Anita about the team? Vladimir?
Yeah, it's working. I agree. And what I think is implicit there, and it was, I believe, by the SOSFOS presentation, it was mentioned, is that there is this gap in mindset. And a great team will also mean that you are not sort of pushing, that there is a gap between your, let's say, because we are talking about academic startups, between the research and the level of ideas that you're generating and what the market needs are. There's a gap between those, and a good team should be able to bridge that gap.
Yeah, that's what in the first talk of the day, were you there? What yes. Chris said. Yes, yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Okay, and I'm curious, Maarten, what do you think?
This one is working.
Is it working when you turn it on? The green. Yeah.
Is it working? Yeah, it is working. I think the balance one is a good one. So one of the things on there as well is the bias, and if you have a team with a lot of people like-minded, it's tricky. It becomes quite biased as well. You believe in your own ideas rather than have a balanced idea of what could work or couldn't work. So I think that one is an important one, and I like the hustler, the hacker, and the third one. But I think you need the hacker as well. You need engineers to make sure that things come to production, that you can test things, that you can start validating. I mean, just a model running on your local notebook, I think that's not going to work. It really needs to put in production. You need engineers for that as well.
Yeah.
So I think the balance of a team is a good one.
Yeah. So that's what you all agree upon. Let's not completely forget about the other things we didn't discuss yet before we go to the something else, which I'm really curious about what you think. So let's talk about a bit about lack of sufficient infrastructure, whether that's a challenge or not. Maarten, do you think that's a challenge?
I often saw a lot of clever models, people working a lot on those models, clever data scientists, but it never got to production. And then you make a lot of mistakes as well. There's always assumptions which are wrong. There are always flaws in your model which you didn't test. And just a trained data set is not enough. I think you should make sure that it runs in production, that it runs on a proper infrastructure, that is scalable as well. So often I spend more time on the infrastructure in my life than on the model itself. The model is quite easy, and keep on improving based on the feedback rather than spend a lot of time on the modeling.
Yeah.
So I do think it's crucial.
Yeah, but if sorry.
Go ahead.
But if this means access to data centers and so, then how I understood the challenge, then I don't agree.
No.
I mean, I understand what you mean.
Yeah.
Sort of putting it in production and all the challenges in that process. But if it means access to data centers, cloud computing, then that is not the case. I think I consider that a solved problem. It's become a commodity.
Yeah. What do you think, audience? Do you experience it as a problem, access to infrastructure, like Vladimir said? No? Yes? There's one person experiencing it as a problem. So maybe does this one work as well? No. Okay. Then we should just be silent. Yeah.
I see a practicality that all started a little bit forced towards Microsoft and Azure, and when they start luring them in with free credits, and then the bill starts to really pile up in the end, and you are like addicted to some of the big US tech. And I think that is an issue if you look at our European values. That's a bit an issue in the end.
Yeah. Do we become too dependent on the big tech companies in that?
It was actually something I've discussed this morning because we've been also reviewing some other countries and what they are doing, what their AI approach is on scaling more startups, and they have a high performance computing part as part of the hardware infrastructure to be to make sure of their sovereignty.
Yeah.
And we still very much rely on AWS, Azure, etc.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and Vladimir, do you think it?
I do see this argument. Absolutely.
Okay. So, in this, when you view it this way, then it's a problem.
I agree.
Yeah. But why? Why did?
But that is not to say that there are no initiatives. Jürgen, talk to Jürgen, because he represents here Azure Cloud, which is a sort of a homegrown initiative, fully focused on AI and high performance computing companies. So options are there.
There are options. Anita, did you want to say anything?
Well, actually, I
about
wanted to say, if you talk about infrastructure,
Yeah.
it could also maybe mean soft infrastructure, like the networks.
Oh.
And I would say we have a lot of possible networks where you can join, and Arjan just explained, and also within the AI coalition here at ACE, at the AI hubs. So I hope that shouldn't be the challenge for startups to get incorporated and get connected. Maybe the right connection to first paying customers to validate and also to get access to their data sets is more challenging.
Yeah. So there is no lack of network, not a lack of soft infrastructure, but also not a lack of.
Maybe there's too much, and we should we should make sure that people know what is already out there. At least we're trying to.
All
to
right.
promote. Yeah.
So to get an overview of what's available, what kind of networks, what kind of technologies, who is responsible for that overview then?
I hear some laughing, but we are taking up this from the AI coalition. So we're right now collaborating with all the 7 hubs in the Netherlands. There are 7 regional AI hubs, also here in Amsterdam. And I have within these hubs, I have the startup contact persons. And they are right now giving all the insights on what do you do about access to talent, access to market, access to capital, what type of programs do you have, what type of events are you running, and we want to make sure that it's on our collaboration platform, that the participants can see what is already out there, and by also discussing this entire field. We get a clearer view on what is missing or how to integrate all sub-initiative into bigger programs.
Exactly.
Because just to pick up on the question that I saw, it was at the bottom of the screen. Somebody asked, yet another, for Arjan, for TechLeap, yet another AI startup supporting initiative. What's different from ICAI? So there's a lot of confusion.
Yeah.
Because we are yet another one.
There are almost too many. The luxury problem.
Yeah, and they overlap.
Yeah, should the networks cooperate a bit more? Yeah, yeah.
I also think as a startup you can choose where you put your time on and don't try to do everything, because that's going to be quite hard. A lot of initiatives, which is good I think, but it can be quite challenging to cover all of them, to be participating in all of them. You have a lot of things to do in the end.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so it's not the lack of infrastructure, but the connecting. And the connections, or the clarity of the infrastructure, or something to be. Let's talk about the something else, which seems seems to be super important. There are also some questions. Are they related to the something else, or more to Arjan's last talk? Let's ask the audience an open question. Think of what is for you the biggest challenge, and I'll start, of course, with our panel, because what do you think? Which challenges we should mention here? What we have talked about the team. Are there other big challenges we should talk about?
Well, in terms of AI, I believe that making sure that people are involved with your AI model, making sure that first of all, I think people understand what a model is doing, but also provide methods to give feedback or to tell them like, hey, I don't agree with this model, I don't agree with the answer of this model. I think those kind of things around the model are super important to include as well, to focus on those kind of things. Otherwise, I'm afraid that models are not accepted, that they sometimes die somewhere on a notebook or whatsoever. I really believe that those kind of things are important, and I often see them failing.
Also with the AI Act and all the
AI
rules
Act is
and
an important
regulations.
one. Yeah, I agree. A lot of regulation coming up as well, so you have to make sure that you can explain what you're doing. Also,
Yeah.
with people leaving and teams changing.
Yeah. Do you agree?
Yeah, I was going to say something else.
Okay.
Which is that I don't think that AI is a very specific or a domain that's too different from any sort of tech innovation or academic innovation. And Prince Constantine from
Yeah,
the special
from
envoy
TechLeap.
from TechLeap,
Yeah.
he gave an interview to University of Twente where he sort of sketched this big picture in general. And he mentioned one point which we could, let's say, pick out specifically for AI, which is the gap that I mentioned in the beginning, sort of between the ideas that you deal with in a research lab and what the market needs at this, what the market is ready for. This is a gap, and in case of AI being such an early discipline, this gap might be even larger. But I think in general we can learn from Chris's presentation, which is not in AI, because the challenges and the lessons we can share.
Yeah. All
Well,
right.
maybe to add to that, I don't disagree, but I think that if you want to scale a startup, there's also the main topics. But if you want to scale an AI startups, I think there's three differentiators that you need to take in place. So first of all, the internationalization comes very fast because it's a winner takes all. So you need to really get fast to scalable model and to international markets. The data, so access to data.
Yeah.
We didn't discuss it yet, but I still think it's a very big thing, and specifically for AI startups. And the other one is the legal aspects, because the legal developments that come over you as a startup, it's like a swamp
Yeah.
full of rules and regulations, and the larger corporates have their
Stakes.
legal staff, and as a startup, it's quite hard to know how to deal with this in a right way and to follow this all. So I think these three, so quick internationalization,
Yeah.
data, and legal, are differentiators.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you recognize it as a multiple startup
I do,
expert?
but I think about the last point, that's also an opportunity for a lot of startups. If you really focus on one thing, make sure you really comply to the regulation, then you're super interesting for a lot of other companies. So if you really make sure you understand what is happening from a legal aspect, and you can solve it, you can make sure it's compliant.
Yeah.
It's I think a big opportunity.
Does anyone in the audience recognize these legal issues that they are challenging? Yeah? Do you want to elaborate on that? Why? What is so challenging about these issues?
Changing rules and regulations is one of the hardest and long-term things in the world.
Changing rules and regulations, yeah. And
Always behind everything.
yeah, and you mean in the Netherlands or internationally?
Internationally.
Yeah.
I just had 2 days with the international government in Amsterdam talking about procurement and rules and regulations around procurement. It's lagging behind everything. They are not following the business.
The rules and regulations are always lacking behind the business. Yes, yes. I see some people nodding. Okay. So, but how should we overcome them? How should we, how should we deal with that?
Be bold.
Yeah, be bold. Yeah.
No, well, maybe one thing we are doing from the AI Coalition is of course, there's many experts already in the field working on this, and we want to make it easier for startups to get access to those experts and less cost consuming and time consuming. So we've stimulated the elaboration of a platform that's called Legal Airs, Legal AI Rules and Regulations. That's been set up by a lawyer and also an AI startup. So there's an AI on the platform where you can see answers to many of your questions concerning legal affairs and also AI. They do workshops, etc. So we collaborate with them. That's one example to make it very practical and easy to use, Jip and Janneke taal.
Yeah.
For people that are not with a legal background.
All right, good. Are there any more challenges? Yes. Yeah, you have not taught. Can I borrow one of your mics? Yeah, that makes it easier for other people to understand. I'll just give it to you against my rules.
Mirko Lukács, Utrecht University. There's one challenge I haven't heard anyone about, but that we face every day as a knowledge transfer office, that's basically in science. Why are there not so many scientists that make the step to startups and entrepreneurs? And in my idea, it is because there are no real incentives yet for scientists to step up to become entrepreneurial or innovative. So what I see as a real structural challenge in the science system is that there are not so much incentives to make that step, because science is about science and not about innovation.
Right. Well, that is shared by at least one person. Yeah?
What I'm missing today, it's entrepreneurship is topsport. And if we talk about topsport, I miss today a topsporter to tell about his stories, about the journey behind the failures and everything behind all the success stories and the revenues and the endless growth. That's also missing today. It's topsport, and not everybody can handle all these topsport issues. They are risk averse. They don't like to take risk and to maybe possibly to fail, because if you fail, then certainly in the Netherlands, everybody cuts your heads off. Not everybody likes it.
Well, that's a good opportunity for maybe next ICAI day to talk about this top sport. But do you recognize that there are no incentives? You were a researcher yourself. Are there?
I failed.
And you failed. All right, all right.
But we can talk about that. Next time.
Yeah.
No incentives. Yeah, well, I think everybody is naturally staying in their comfort zone. So yeah, I think you need to want to step out of that comfort
So
zone.
actually, you say it's not about the incentives; it's about the boldness of the research.
No, both.
Oh,
Both.
It's also about the culture, I think. So a lot of startups don't really have a culture to encourage a lot of research. The research can be sometimes quite shallow. So it depends also on the startup, I think. Some startups really put a lot of effort on doing proper research, and others, don't. They really push on commercial figures. And I think really depends on the startup.
And maybe also the commercial offers that are there for students that want to step into an AI job and preferably go to or Booking or Google or
big companies. Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah.
Because when I talk to AI startups, they mention access to talent as their challenge, for example. Well, we are here maybe fortunate in Amsterdam to have a lot of talent, but I think that is a problem that should be mentioned.
Right.
Somewhere else.
Arjen.
No, just to react on, because I think, to be honest, I see a lot of ambition with scientists, to start and researchers to start a business. They just don't know, there's no avenue for them really, to kind of get going. And we just launched a program this week, it's called Faculty of Impact. And I know it's just one of the things, and it's a 2-year program, it's expensive, but at least it gives the opportunity to researchers to both combine research and building their own venture at the same time over the course of 2 years. So they have a bit of time to kind of play with that. And I think educational programs on entrepreneurship or any sort of activity that kind of gets them out of their comfort zone, I think will help, because I think it's a matter of. I don't think it's a matter of not being there. It's a matter of, or not having the ambition to. I think it's a matter of support and opportunity to explore that.
All right, good.
Yeah, absolutely. And at ACE AI Lab, we do the same. So Faculty of Impact is for faculty, where you might be even deeper into your academic paradigm. And what we see at AI Lab is although we are open for all sort of levels of academics, most of the candidates to AI Lab are master students because they are early on in their career that they can try this out. So they're not...
Okay. This panel was all about challenges. Are there more challenges? I want to go a bit broader.
Yeah. So I did some research on this topic at Scale Up Nation, for example, and I had my own startup, and I'm building a startup again.
Yeah.
So I think one of the, big elephant in the room, I think, is already talked a little bit about it. It took 2 years to get an IP license with the universities. I think the role of the government is really one part is supporting startups, but the other hand is not helping at all. So if you look at the US and Israel, for example, the government plays role as the early buyer of products of startups.
Mm-hmm.
And in the Netherlands, that is not the case at all.
What do you wish the government to change?
Yeah, the government should be acting as a launching customer.
Aha.
And that's not done because then you have misuse of public funding.
Aha.
And it's also in the technology transfer, the argument will put on the table that it's misuse of public money for the individuals. And I think that is a really blocking startups. If a other academic hears that he needs to negotiate or she needs to negotiate 2 years with the TTO to get the IP deal, well, you need to have a good pace,
a long breath.
Long breath to overcome this question. And this is really turning down. I've talked to a lot of people that actually had no energy at all to go through that. They see what the colleagues go through and say, well, leave it here. I'm fine with my current position.
All right. The role of the government, I think maybe Anita can elaborate on that. Did you want to mention the government as well?
Yeah, well, maybe very short.
Yeah, sure.
I'm for a long time intrigued by the fact that the government doesn't interact in ICAI labs at all, besides sometimes subsidizing things, but they don't play an active role, which is I think it's very strange.
Look at the US and Israel. DARPA is fully funded by the US government.
Yes. Yeah, and
Right.
for example, if you look at typical labs like a fintech lab within ICAI, why is the government not interested in joining and participating?
Yeah. Okay, the big elephant in the room, is that the government we didn't mention yet? Anita, did you want to? Yeah. No, I wanted to make it. I like it to be a bit more interactive. Actually, my favorite kind of event is walking to you every time with a mic. But let's finish with the government as our last challenge to discuss. How can we convince the government to act different, or what should the government do, Anita?
And faster, maybe. Different and faster. But what I do see is we also have working stream on public services. They have a buyer group initiation for large tenders. So they are asking also the startups about, do you have vision solutions, for example, drones, AI solutions. Within the defense, of course, they right now also need to find out how to spend their money in the right way. I hope and I suggest that there will be more solution, but I fully agree with Jurgen that government as a launching customer is still very much lagging behind in the Netherlands.
Mm-hmm.
The regulator part we're quite good at.
Yeah.
But it can still be very much approved.
Yeah.
And the government is, of course, also involved in the AI coalition, and but might step up the game also with regards to the growth fund, of course.
Yeah, that's true. Any remarks about our government?
What I do recognize is that the government in the Netherlands, I guess, but a lot of countries is quite risk averse. So they they probably tend to invest in proof of concepts or MVPs, but things really, when it becomes tricky, it becomes way harder to really implement something, I think, at the government, at least in my experience.
Yeah.
It stays in pilots.
Yeah, and that's
smaller
that's
programs.
tricky, because in the end, that's not real validation, I think.
Yeah. And Vladimir, do you have anything to add? What did
I know nothing about this, so I leave it to Prince Constantine. Yeah, I think that we just need to sort of listen to each other, interact more, go out of these individual language games, because I think we have to first agree on definitions, and be at the same page before we do business.
Right.
Maybe one more thing to stimulate the government as launching customer is a very great for your credibility. So where I see that use cases in AI are applied, for example, just last week I saw a presentation of a use case where the National Cybersecurity Center was using AI, and this very much helped the startup in also attracting other partners, because the NCSC was working with them. This is also the case with the Ministry of Defense, for example. There's so much procurement, money to be spent in the right way. We should really stimulate them to make sure to also support startups in their first launching customers.
All right. You wanted to have the last word? Yeah, I almost wanted to finish. Yeah. Any brilliant last words? No pressure.
We need solutions. If we change the researcher, just to research into applied researcher, then you have you create a complete different mindset. How do you do research and why do you research? And at the end, in the procurement, I was last 2 days. I also pitched into large procurement. They always talk about collaborations, set up collaborations between the big ones, the big corporate world, but also, if we can arrange it, that we also take in startup into account, always in the procurement phase, that you have also taken to, and then you can also stimulate in a more structured way startup world.
Thank you, and let's end with that. Let's end this panel discussion for now, and I hope we can continue at our borrel. So I would like to have a big applause for Anita, Vladimir, and Maarten. Thank you. Yeah.